Hmm. Damon's on vacation. Spears is busy. And plus he was just on yesterday. Pete Souza, he's coming on next week. Everybody's busy in the damn off season. Better call Saul. Welcome in, folks, to the AZ Wildcats podcast. Happy Friday. We finally made it through the week. TGIF, folks. I'm very excited for the weekend. For one weekend closer to being back united with college football. Days, hours closer to being back reunited with our beloved college basketball. We have a packed show for you guys today on a Friday. We are talking 2024 front court in review, looking ahead to how 2025's front court with a returning Motiejus Krivas could actually help elevate Arizona into the national title conversation. We also have Saul Bookman coming on the show to discuss not only expectations for Arizona in 2025, but to illustrate a little bit more of the X's and O's as to how the front court can be the game changer for the 2025 Arizona Wildcats. How are we doing in the chat? Thank you all for tuning in. Leave a like on this video if you have not done so already. Be one of the first. Be one of the first people in here to leave a like. We have a couple likes here for people in the chat, and I just want to make sure you know if we have someone watching this video, you need to be liking this video as well. That's just a requirement for this here stream. But as we get into today's show, obviously, like I said, we're going to talk about the front court. We're going to talk about potential expansion talk, not only in the SEC, but in the Big 12. And we're also going to talk about how the gauntlet of a schedule for the Arizona Wildcats could actually pay huge dividends come tournament time next season. So let's get right here into today's show. First, by reviewing 2024's Arizona Wildcat front court. Obviously, you had Motiejus Krivas come into the season advertised as a pivot point of the offense, a pivot point of the team in general. And I feel as though the injury 8 games into the year, albeit, really forced Tommy Lloyd to be flexible, be like water, shout out to Bruce Lee, and change his game plan on the fly, change his schematics on the fly. And by the end of the season, Arizona's offense was a lot better, but it didn't. They always lacked that go-to set, that go-to player, for lack of a better phrase, because Caleb Love was your go-to guy out of the backcourt, but he was up and down with consistency all year. And in the front court, you really lacked that consistent production, I'll say. You had Tobe Awaka, who emerged as a premier rebounder, not only for Arizona, not only in the Big 12, but in the entire country. And in doing so, he ingratiated himself in this program, in this fan base, and also, more importantly, in Tommy Lloyd's system. The system that Tommy Lloyd runs here at Arizona is a huge reason as to why Tobe Awaka returned for another year playing for the Wildcats, when I'm sure there were some offers probably thrown his way that he could have went elsewhere. He did say yesterday during his press availability that there was no chance, no thought in his mind that he was not going to return to Arizona for a second season. The system that Lloyd ran, the coaching that he got, the development that he saw in his own personal game really led him to returning for 2025. In 2024, he was able to work on his tenacity and his versatility, and like I said, become one of the most premier rebounders at the college level across the entire country, regardless of conference. He also, I felt like, throughout the lulls of the 2024 season, throughout games where Arizona's effort might have been waning, or I'll say the effectiveness of their effort might have been waning, you saw Tobe Awaka, not with his production, but yes, with his rebounding and also with his overall effort, somewhat carry the team through those lulls at times. It kind of felt like For example, I believe it was the Oregon game. It felt like Arizona does not win that game without Tobe Awaka keeping them in it with his tenacity, with his rebounding, with his offensive rebounding, as well as his defensive rebounding on both sides of the court. Going back to Motiejus Krivas, though, in just those 8 games, he did play 8 games last season, and he left a lot to be desired, I will say. You could argue that his best game came against Oklahoma, where he shot 4 for 7 from the field, 6 for 7 from the line, put up 6 boards, a block, on only 1 foul and a turnover, and also put up 14 points in that game against Oklahoma, which was a 5-point loss in the Battle for Atlantis third place game there. He also had a decent game against Davidson, which you're supposed to have good games against teams like Davidson when you play for Arizona. His play overall just left a lot to be desired. It had people wondering to the extent he was fully healed from that injury that he suffered, I believe, the summer before last season. It kind of flared up, and he believed he was healthy, came back, played 8 games, got injured in December, and was unable to continue the season. And it took him out for the rest of the year, right? But in that time in which he did play, like I said, he left a lot to be desired. And I thought he left a lot to be desired specifically in the rebounding category. This is a player who's listed at 7'2", 260 on ESPN. Now, I know his physique has kind of changed over the time since he's been out with the injury. I think he's actually put on more mass. It looks more Big 12 ready, in my personal opinion. But the skill set and the production seem to be mismatched right now. If you go back and watch Motiejus Krivas highlights, there's so much fundamental skill to his game as a big, right? He has a nice drop step at times. He can, score posted up. I feel like he does a good job moving up and down for his size. He's a big dude. So he's not exactly like a freak athlete by any means. He's not like a Kaman Maluak who's really athletic and can get up to the free throw line, get back to defend a shot. Krivas is not exactly that kind of a center. He's more of a traditional big. Now, I do think there are 2 areas of improvement that I would love to see in Motiejus Krivas' game. I guess 3 going into 2025 that I pinpointed in the 8 games that he did play for Arizona last season. I would love to see increased rebounding numbers in those 8 games. He only averaged 4.5 rebounds per game. And yes, you played at Wisconsin. Yes, you played at Duke. And, to a lesser extent, you played at Oklahoma and at West Virginia. But you can't have just, let's say 6 rebounds in 21 minutes against Oklahoma. You can't just have 4 rebounds in 17 minutes against Davidson. I know that you're only playing those 17 minutes, but let's make the most of those minutes. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say that a center who is in NBA mock draft conversations preseason should have more than, 4 rebounds in a 17-minute performance against Davidson, 6 in a 21-minute performance against Oklahoma, 2 in a just 12-minute performance against West Virginia as well. But overall, the production left a lot to be desired from Motiejus Krivas last season. Now, how can he change that? 3 things I think he can really attack. First, I just spoke about was the rebounding. Second, I think he has the potential to be a really productive rim protector in the right system. Last year, you saw him put up 1 block against West Virginia, a block against Oklahoma, 2 against Davidson, and then 2 against ODU, Old Dominion. But there really was no consistency of that rim protection. And with the 7'2" frame, and he is athletic for 7'2". I say that he struggles to get up and get back, but that's mostly because he's a heavy guy. He's just not the fastest laterally on the basketball court, but he does possess decent athleticism to leap and to block shots if you watch the tape. And so I feel like within a system that has a Tobe Awaka, a Koa Pete, and another year under Tommy Lloyd's tutelage, it feels like Krivas could be more of a rim protector for Arizona next year if he so chooses to focus on that portion of his game. And then the third and probably most important thing for Mo Krivas entering another year of college basketball, and more specifically another year in the Big 12. He really didn't get much Big 12 experience. He did play against West Virginia, but that was a non-conference game, early in the season there. And you have to feel like the physicality is something that he must be ready for. He spoke about it yesterday in his press availability. The importance of just going into these games knowing that you're going to get beat up, going into these games knowing that it's going to be physical, going into these games knowing that you're going to have to bring the fight in this game for the entirety of the game. I think that's what I want to see out of Mo Krivas. Really using his frame to not only get buckets and get to the rack at will, but also get the rack at will from a post up position. I'm not talking about Krivas putting it on the floor, but I will say like he doesn't need to have a ton of points production on next year's roster. There already is a ton of that projected on the 2025 Arizona Wildcats roster. I'm looking at Krivas to use that physicality to step up his rebounding, to step up his shot blocking, and really become more of a. And this is not like a me demeaning his role. This is me kind of saying not everybody can be the star of the team, right? He has to be the key supplemental piece in the front court to the rest of this team, right? You look back at, past national champions and what they've been able to do. We're going to look more into this later in the show. But front court guys on these national championship teams, you look at 2024-25, which is your Florida Gators, 10.5 points, 7.5 assists, or 7.5 rebounds, 2.2 assists for Alex Condon last year, who was their most productive big. He's 6'11", he's listed as a forward, but 6'11". And then you also have Chinyelu, who was able to put up a pretty respectable 6.6 rebounds on 6 points. And then you go to those UConn teams where you had Caravan and you had Sonogo, truly productive bigs. But if you also look at those national champions, like I said, we're going to do that a little bit later in the show, more in depth. The guards obviously carry the points production. That's the backcourt is what's going to carry the points production there. But the front court on these national champions are productive as well, but maybe, like I said, not in the points categories, but those defensive categories. You need that strong back line to supplement the production that you're getting from your backcourt, right? You cannot have them out there on an island. We saw at times last year, even on that Arizona Wildcats team, the lack of ability for the guards and the bigs to really play off of each other in a smooth way really hurt Arizona's offense. I felt like you had a lot of your turn, my turn in terms of front court, back court. You didn't have a lot of, here's how Caleb Love is going to get the ball to Awaka. Here's how Jaden Bradley is going to, get the ball down low to even a Trey Townsend in a small ball lineup, right? Like they just didn't have that bread and butter post game that I think a lot of national champions do have in their bag. They might not be predicated on that offensively, but they do have that in their bag. And if Motiejus Krivas can become a part of that post offense in a real efficient way, that's huge from that supplemental production standpoint. Where, like I said, where he needs to truly produce is defensively. And by the defensive side of things, I mean offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, and shot blocking are the three areas in which I really think Motiejus Krivas could shine on next year's team if, that is the role that Tommy Lloyd's putting him into. Because you look at what Tobe Awaka brings to the table, right? He brings tenacity and incredible production at the rebounding side of things on the 6'8" frame. Excuse me. Tobe Awaka is not a tall guy for a forward in college basketball, right? He is a huge guy for any human. He's a massive guy with a ton of muscle. And it's a huge reason why he's able to get the rebounds that he does get. But you don't really have in Tobe Awaka the same level of true big that you do with a Motiejus Krivas. And like I was saying last season, you were able to supplant that production from the bigs with a guy like Henry Vasar because he was so versatile, right? Great shot blocker, great athlete, could really be aggressive on both ends of the floor when he was choosing to, when he felt comfortable with the matchup. And, he did leave some to be desired at times. He still, got a lot of room to grow and develop with his game. We talked a lot about the rebounding, the tip out rebounds, how he just got to go grab them with two hands. But that the production that Vasar gave you was perfect, right? Because it supplanted the production of some of the guards that maybe could have more variance to their production, right? And Brandon Jameson here in the chat says, the various high-low play with Balo and Koloko was crazy. You were totally right. We didn't have that much last year. And I did want to touch on the high-low game. I was going to do it later, but we can just get into it right now. The conversation of, has Tommy Lloyd ever had a front court like this stylistically? Like if you look back at the front courts, right, that Tommy Lloyd has had, you go back to your, last year with the front court of Henry Vasar, Tobe Awaka, Emmanuel Steven coming deep off the bench and Trey Townsend kind of playing that small ball 4. You didn't really see a lot of that high-low game until later in the year. Tommy Lloyd started to bring it out a little bit with Awaka and with Townsend, just a little bit. He kind of broke it out of the bag a little bit. I just didn't feel like he had the tools to really play around with that too much. Then you go back to 2023-24, and then your bigs. Now we're talking about that's that Oumar Ballo team with Krivas coming deep off the bench, and you also had Kashad Johnson as that forward piece. And now here's the thing: you might look at Kashad Johnson's listed height and listed weight at 6'7", 210, and think that maybe him and Tobe Awaka are, similar comps. They are not in any way similar comps. Anybody that watched those games know that their play style is completely different, right? And so stylistically, that 2023-24 front court, completely different than what you have in 2025 or 2024-25, right? You don't really have much depth at the front court positions as well on those teams. And then you go back to 2022-23. And now we're talking about Oumar Ballo still, but now that forward pairing has now gone back to Azuolas Tubelis, who stood at 6'11" and was pretty versatile as well out there. He could do a little bit of everything offensively, giving you almost 20 points and 10 rebounds a game that season. Awaka's not that guy. Pete, though. Koa Pete is more that guy. And that is more so where we can look at 2021-22 just for fun as well, because back then you had Christian Koloko and Oumar Ballo, pairing them with the Tubelis brothers as well there. But this is kind of what I was going to get to with this conversation in general with the high-low game. You didn't see that much, and I think it's something that Tommy Lloyd wants to implement more into his offense, because I don't think that they really had the tools as much recently over the last 2 seasons specifically. But this upcoming year, I feel like Koa Pete is really going to be the equalizer for that high-low game. Because of his size and strength, he can play, even a small ball 5 against some teams. And I think that the versatility of a Koa Pete, while not being the best outside shooter, he does give you a lot more ball handling from the front court when he is playing in the front court. And I think it gives you a lot more flexibility to do a high-low with Awaka specifically, who has said that working on the three-point game has become a huge part of his offseason routine and becoming a more dangerous shooter from outside. I'm not saying he wants to be Steph Curry. I mean, I'm sure he wants to be Steph Curry, but I'm not saying he's going to become Steph Curry. But if he can become a player that the defense even has to think that they might let that shot go, it changes a lot for his offense, right? And you saw, I think he put up only 5 threes last year. And when he did shoot a 3, it kind of felt like, whoa, Awaka's shooting a 3. But apparently, according to like Erica Day and Tommy Lloyd himself, like that's something that Awaka can do in practice. And so it feels like next year's team, Tommy Lloyd finally has the tools at his disposal to have the most versatile front court attack that he's ever had, right? You have like a traditional big in Mo Krivas, who still has skill and still has some athleticism to him. I mean, if you go back and watch the highlights from before he was at Arizona, I know that is a foot injury and a lot of muscle mass ago, but the fundamental skills are still there for a very skilled, talented, high-level big man. And then you have your more, bruiser, brute of a man in Tobe Awaka, gentle giant, if you will, who's like standing at 6'8", so he's a little stockier for that 4-5 position, but he can out-rebound literally anybody in the country, regardless of size. And then you have Koa Pete, who's going to be kind of playing that tweener, big/wing/huge 2, whatever the hell Koa Pete's going to be doing at times this season, who really brings that flavor to the front court of, while yes, you can run multiple sets with Koa Pete that you could not run with Trey Townsend last year. And this is not in no way a shot at Trey Townsend, but he was just simply not versatile enough at the Big 12 level to boost Arizona's front court in the ways that it needed last season, right? He provided good muscle, great effort, as well as toughness at times for Arizona, but was not nearly as productive or athletic as advertised, and was not able to really find his outside shot, which was also a part of his game as advertised, until the very end of the season. And I think that is in part due to the Krivas injury, forcing him to play a little bit more of a traditional 4, which is probably not really the way you want to use a Trey Townsend. But regardless of how Trey Townsend's season went last year, this spot seems to increase in skill, athleticism, and level of play this upcoming season with the addition of Koa Pete, Dwayne Aristode, C.D. Gay, and the return of Awaka and Krivas. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Emmanuel Steffen, because kind of an underrated role on last year's team. And I'm not saying that, he helped lead to success. But I mean, the Emmanuel Stephan role is an underrated role on every roster. I feel like the third or fourth big off the bench can truly be that like wild card, can truly be that stylistic changeup you need at times to get you out of the monotony of whatever offense and defensive schemes you are running. He came in long, lanky, shooting floaters from, just outside the restricted area. It really did give a different pace to the front court when Emmanuel Stephan was in there, but he just didn't have the Big 12 level of skill yet. He didn't have the runway because of the players in front of him to really get those Big 12 reps, become a Big 12 big. But CD Gay might just be that guy who can do that for you, right? And we're talking about losing out on a Henry Vasar, and we're talking about losing out on that versatility from the front court positions. I honestly believe that, maybe not year one, maybe not at the highest level, but CD Gay can be an improvement over Emmanuel Stephan in the sense that when you need him, maybe against lower competition or in games where things have, kind of separated on the scoreboard a little bit, you can get CD Gay in there to give you different looks, to give you different speeds, to give you different reps that the defense might not be used to. And then I don't know how to evaluate CD Gay's expectations in year one, right? But if he is around at Arizona for year two, whether or not, he has some crazy year and gets picked in the second round or whatever, or if he gets transferred out, whatever, I feel like if he stays for a second year at Arizona, we will see him be that ideal wild card, kind of a big who can mix it up, can step out, can be an athlete at that 5 position at his huge size. So I really feel like this roster is tooled to be way more versatile than any other roster Tommy Lloyd has had. And I know we're specifically talking about the front court, but it's true of all the positions too, right? And yeah, I just feel like Tommy Lloyd has never had a front court like this stylistically. You could say that Ballo is a great comp for, maybe not production because he was a double-double machine, but what stylistically maybe he might be a comp for Krivas because they're kind of two bigs that are, like I'm talking about, I expect them to have big defensive implications as well. But I just think that's the closest comp that Tommy's had. I don't think it's really a one-to-one comp. Koloko's certainly not a one-to-one comp to Krivas stylistically. I also think Koloko, I don't know. He almost is. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get into that conversation, but staying on topic, I feel like Krivas offers something that Tommy Lloyd necessarily hasn't had yet, right? The potential, because I feel like Ballo, we've seen his ceiling. We've seen his ceiling because he got paid as such to go to Indiana, right? Like this is, I know he's, Summer League now and the Miami Wildcats and all of that. But like as a college big, we saw his peak. It wasn't gonna I don't think there was any more juice to squeeze out of the Ballo fruit, right? I feel like with Krivas, his ceiling is drastically higher, right? Maybe you guys in the chat disagree. Let me know if you feel differently or if you feel the same and you feel like I'm a genius. I don't know. I feel like Ballo, like I said, his ceiling was reached, and Krivas is not really even scratching his ceiling. At least I hope. And I feel like that is a huge reason why if you're Tommy Lloyd, you don't overextend to keep a Henry Vasar and force Krivas out to transfer, and you put faith back into Motiejus Krivas in 2025 that he can be that guy that was projected for NBA mock drafts before last season, and he can be that guy that when brought in, Tommy Lloyd and staff said that he could be a conference player of the year type of guy. Like, that is probably still in there somewhere. Maybe it's even been helped by the time off and the focus on just being a better player mentally, and understanding the scheme mentally, and maybe he'll come out firing in 2025. But that is yet to be determined. We're going to take a quick break here on the AZ Wildcats podcast, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk more about comparing, this upcoming year's front court to national championship teams' front court. We're also going to have Saul Bookman joining here not too long after the ad break, so stick around. We got a lot more for you here on the AZ Wildcats podcast. Whew. I mean, it's the summer, folks, and that means it's hot out here in Arizona, and there's only one optimal way to cool down, and that is with America's thirst stop, Circle K. Circle K is America's thirst stop, but it's America's favorite gas stop as well because they have all the deals for you. Yesterday was like Inner Circle Fuel Day, so you can get up to 40 cents off per gallon on gas if you're part of that Inner Circle membership crew. Join that inner circle for free today by downloading the Circle K app and get access to 25 cents off per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. That's free money. Free money. Then you get 3 cents off per gallon every fill-up after that until you graduate into that 5 cents off per gallon class. And folks, let me tell you, Circle K has saved my bacon a couple times when I'm running low on gas, when I'm running low on fuel. Physically, Circle K is there for me. So join that Inner Circle program for free today by downloading that Circle K app. Terms and conditions do apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for more details. And you know, Empire Today, if you need flooring, if you need a good foundation for your life to stand on, you don't got nothing without a foundation. And the flooring in your house is the foundation that you do stand on every day, making so many important decisions. So why not make it a floor that is fit for your space at home? And that is what Empire Today can do. We've all been to the big box stores. And like I say all the time, their main goal is to get you into that flooring aisle, get you to buy the most expensive thing, and then get you out before you think twice. Empire Today is not like that. They're giving you $350 off just for using our promo code of PHNX. Yes, that's $350 off if you go to EmpireToday.com/PHNX. But why should you choose Empire Today? It's because, like I said, they care and cater to your personal experience. They want to make sure that the flooring in your space is exactly what you want, that it fits your space, it fits your decor. So like I said, schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. PHNX listeners can get that $350 discount when using promo code PHNX. Restrictions apply. Visit EmpireToday.com/PHNX for full details. Now, we got Saul Bookman coming in here in only a matter of minutes here, folks. And we're going to talk to Saul more about that front court conversation that we were just having moments ago before I had to hit that, little ad break. Speaking of ads, a little tangent for you guys. Speaking of ads, our ad man Max is, oh man, what's the adjective for this guy? He is well known in this office for saying a lot of stuff about ads. You know what I mean? It's just his job. It's what he does. And I'm wearing this Georgia Aquarium t-shirt. Well, look how cute that is with a little penguin on it. And it's all about protecting, preserving wildlife and nature. And Max says, is that a free ad on your shirt? And first of all, I didn't know this is the society I lived in. You know what I mean? I didn't know that's what we were doing. But I told you, hey, look, Max, I'll do you a solid. Because I went to Georgia. I went to the aquarium, right? And I came back. And nothing really felt better than when I go to Odyssey in Phoenix. It's just not the same in Georgia as it is in Phoenix. And they say that Georgia has the best aquarium. I beg to differ. I think it's Odyssey. Their layout is more intuitive. I feel like it's a better, user experience, I'll say, going into that aquarium. It's less confusing, less stimulation. It's just about the damn fish at Odyssey Aquarium. But nevertheless, back to what I was saying on today's show, talking about Arizona basketball and expectations for 2025. Do we think that Motiejus Krivas will be the player that he has been advertised to be in 2025? That is the main question at hand here. Because like I alluded to in my show tweet for today, if Motiejus Krivas is who he's been advertised to be, he could be the game-changing piece for Arizona men's basketball. Mostly because of how high his expectations were coming in to Arizona basketball, right? And you know what you're getting out of Tobe Awaka. We can talk about it a little bit, but do we believe that we know what Koa Pete's going to do? Because I honestly feel like we kind of, you can't really get too specific. You're trying to tell the future at that point, but it does feel like Koa Pete's going to be one of the most productive players in college basketball next season, based off of his pedigree, based off of his size, his skill, his mentality as well. And you have to believe that you're going to get increased, at least this much, increased production out of Tobe Awaka, who was already a rebounding freak last season. And that's not to mention, the production you're going to get from Dwayne Aristode, Braden Burries, Jaden Bradley, and the list continues to go on. It feels like if you can get 75% of what has been advertised for Mo Krivas, that this Arizona basketball team is going to be truly dangerous and truly balanced in 2025. You would have a sizable, strong, skilled front court with a rim protector who's also a traditional big, and then you have a pretty much a rebounding specialist in Tobe Awaka who also can guard multiple positions because of his stockier size and strength. And then you have a Cole Pete who seems to be a complete blue chipper in every sense of the word. And so, like I said, if Motiejus Krivas can rebound from this injury, come back mentally stronger, mentally sharper because of all the time left to focus on the scheme because he couldn't play the game was taken away from him for a year, I think this Arizona team should be preseason in that conversation for national championship contention. That is not a crazy thing to say. I was looking at past national champions today, and we mentioned the balance between the front court and the back court earlier, how your backcourt players have to play in sync with your front court players. The whether the guards are the stars of your team or not, they have to be able to get the front court players the ball. So the defense, they have to react to the penetration that you're getting into the paint, and they have to show you different looks, and it alters their defense. But if you're a one-dimensional attack, they know exactly how to stop you. And I think at times Arizona fell into that one-dimensional realm last season with Caleb Love, and this was not the fault of Caleb Love. He just didn't have the people around him to supplement that production, specifically from the guard position as well, right? And I can likely stop my yapping a little sooner because I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, that we are getting Saul Bookman in the building. Saul, how are we doing today on this fine Friday?
How's it going, Kevin? Never a bad day when I get to spend it with you.
So sweet to start the show, Saul. I appreciate it. See, I felt like I had to call you today because, Damon's on vacation. I just had Spears on yesterday, and I wanted to talk some hoop today. Had to talk a little bit of football yesterday. I wanted to talk about hoop today with my guy, Saul Bookman. I led off the show talking about the front court and how I feel like this front court stylistically is different than anything Tommy Lloyd has put forth on the table in his career with Arizona so far. It feels like he's got the most tools in the toolbox from a front court position that he's ever had. There's a lot of versatility there, a lot of size, a lot of skill. I'll open up with this. Do you think that this is the most versatile front court that Tommy Lloyd has ever put forward?
Ooh, pretty close. Pretty close. Yeah, I would have to say so. Yeah, in terms of their flexibility, their ability to be able to guard multiple positions, switch, guard on the perimeter. I think you only have two guys that you might question their strengths on the perimeter, but they can be rotated in and out. And depending on what your dominance is on the offensive side, you can live with some of the weaknesses on the defensive side if you go about this the right way. So I would say yeah.
And part of that versatility, obviously, is, in my opinion, we have to start in terms of versatility with Cole Pete, who's going to be kind of flowing in and out of that front court to wing area of the depth chart there. How do you think that Koa Pete's skill set and athleticism can help some of the other bigs mesh better this year? Because I was talking about how you had Awaka last year and Vesar really holding it down in the front court, but you also had Trey Townsend in there at times subbing in the small ball lineups to try to supplant that loss of Krivas because you needed minutes from the front court, right? It felt like, and this is no diss to Trey Townsend, that he just didn't have the skill at that size to play the 4 at the Big 12 level, in my opinion. And so I feel like if you 1-to-1, if you're just replacing Trey Townsend for Koa Pete, how do you think that changes the front court play? How do you think that helps maybe Krivas and Awaka mesh better together?
I think it does wonders because Koa Pete, the thing about Koa Pete that you're going to start to realize really soon is he's a very cerebral player, very calculated, makes good decisions on the basketball court. Very rarely will you see him do something foolish out there. And because of his mid-range ability and the improvement of that, he's going to be able to force the defense to pick or choose which one they want. And now, and if Krivas can get to the point where he gets back to that consistent down low threat, where you have to account for him and sometimes even double him, that's a nightmare for any defense to have to manage on the offensive side. So that's where I think Koa Pete's most effective is his playmaking, because not only will he be able to hit that midi, he'll be able to hit guys on the backdoor screen if they hit opposite ball action screens, and he'll hit the over the top to Krivas. If the ball goes down low in the post and they try to double, he's going to know exactly where to be and how to cut and where the defensive spots are. So that, in the difference between him and Trey Townsend, I very much agree that I feel like Trey was more of like either all at the rim or all at the on the perimeter. There wasn't really anything in between, where I think if Koa comes in, he's going to be a little bit more of that mid-range down low presence that can run the court and occasionally hit the three. And I know that's what he's working on right now in the offseason, is his three-point shooting too. So yeah, I definitely think they're in a way better position right now with Koa Pete than they were with Trey Townsend.
I mean, Tobe Awaka also working on his three. I think we're just going to have the greatest bigs shooting of all time. I wanted to ask you about Motiejus Krivas on offense specifically, right? I mean, I feel like I said this earlier in the show as well, I feel like he left a lot to be desired from a production standpoint in his short time last season playing. And I guess specifically from a rebounding and defense standpoint, how do you feel like in 2025 he's going to be utilized on offense? Because I know coming into last season, it was advertised that he was going to play a huge role in the offense until he went out with that injury, and it kind of forced Tommy Lloyd to reassess on the fly. Going into 2025, how much of a role do you think he's going to play on offense, and what is that going to look like, and do you think?
It's really dependent on how he's recovered from that foot injury. I think, that's the one thing about last year is like you can only take so much stock into what he did, because you just don't know how much that foot was really bothering him. So I think from my perspective, if we're thinking about Krivas on a development and pro basketball standpoint, his effectiveness down low should be automatic. It should be undeniable that if you don't double this dude, he's going to get his way. If he's that kind of guy where he's not as physically intimidating as he should be, if he's playing down to the level of his competition, and I don't mean playing down from an effort standpoint, I mean more of like there are some tendencies that he would have that would allow smaller defenders to still be able to guard him at a high rate, because he would shrink himself. Koa actually has a little bit of those tendencies too when he goes to the basket. When he's not full steam ahead, sometimes when he makes those short moves near the basket, sometimes he has a tendency to kind of shrink himself at the rim and allow guys to kind of deflect or get their hands on the ball. We saw that a lot in the U19 World Cup. And I think that's something that Arizona will coach out of him, so I don't think that'll be an issue when we get to the season. Krivas has still had those tendencies, so I would love to see the improvement there. And then just flexibility-wise, agility-wise, how easy is he moving around the court, around the rim? Is he going to be able to have any kind of a threat from mid-range out? I think if those things are shored up, then 1,000,000%, I think this team, it goes from I would say right now they're a top 10, top 15 team to top 5 team in the nation, because they have a dominant big man. And we've seen the effectiveness of dominant bigs in college basketball. You only have to go back as recently as Edey for Purdue and his effectiveness. Now he's a freakishly tall guy, and now Krivas isn't quite that level, but he is close. And I think skill set wise, he could match up to exactly what Edey provided Purdue. And you saw how far that took them, all the way to the national championship against UConn. So I think Krivas's ability to be as flexible as possible and not just being pigeonholed on the block. That's all we're going to do. Just block to block to block. No, we got to have some more flexibility in terms of his game and being able to show, how adept he has been at, or he can be at the different things that Tommy Lloyd's going to want to do. Because if Krivas is constantly clogging up the paint, that will become an issue. You can't just have a one-trick pony down there, because it's going to be so much easier to guard, and a lot of teams will probably opt to go zone and really pack the paint and force Arizona to shoot from the outside. So you would like to see your best players, and Krivas and Koa Pete should be 2 of your top 5 best players, have the opportunity to be as dominant around the rim as possible. So that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the things that Tommy Lloyd would like to do offensively, and how he might like to mix it up a little bit next season. Part of, I think, what Tommy Lloyd would have loved to do more of last season was the high-low game that we were talking about earlier on the show. He played with it a little bit towards the end of the year when he was trying to mix stuff up, but like I said, he didn't really have the tools to really fully go for that, right, schematically. How do you think that the high-low game will look in 2025? Are we going to see more of that, in your opinion?
Yeah, I a million percent think so. So, obviously sitting there watching Arizona, especially in the Big 12 tournament and really against Houston. Houston was obviously the most dominant against Arizona in terms of Houston was so good at taking away the things that Arizona wanted to do that gave them comfortability on the court, right? But Houston was not a dominant big team, but Arizona didn't have really a dominant big. Vasar wasn't as dominant down low on the block as he could have been, I think, and maybe you will see that from him moving forward. And North Carolina, Tobe was a little bit more consistent around the rim than he was actually, if you believe it or not. But even Tobe didn't have those second and third kind of versatile moves, especially when you're talking about putting the ball on the ground that you're going to need. Koa has that. I don't know if Krivas has that yet. We've seen a little bit here and there from Krivas, but he's not flexible enough, at least not at the time, was not flexible enough to keep the defense honest with his dribble and his handle. And even around the rim, you do need to have some sense of that. So I think, yes, high-low, for sure. When you watch Tommy Lloyd's offense and the flexibility in terms of that dribble handoff series that they like to go to and really the pick and roll, there are so many different options at each and every point for every single player on the court, depending on where they're at in that series, and depending what kind of action they want to run weak side. That if you're kind of a one-trick pony, you only have so many options and so much versatility in your game. So I think with this particular group, especially when you throw in the wing options that they have, that is going to provide Tommy with a lot more options when they run into teams like a Houston that force you to do things that you're uncomfortable with. Because now you have guys, Jaden should be a much better three-point shooter this year, without a doubt. If he doesn't improve that, his draft stock is basically out the window, because you can't be a point guard or a guard in the NBA and not shoot the three. Like, you have to. So Jaden will improve there. You have Burries, who's going to be a good three-point shooter. And then you add all the other elements, ADO as well, coming off the bench. He better come off the bench. I'd be shocked if he started. You have too many solid options around the table to start ADO like you did over Carter Bryant last year. That just is egregious. And listen, if you don't think Tommy Lloyd isn't second guessing himself in terms of the way he handled Carter Bryant last year based on how he's performed in Summer League, I can guarantee you there's probably a little bit of like, damn it, I should have known better.
That's interesting.
That's just kind of my take on it. But yeah, I think definitely the versatility that Tommy likes to have in the offense, he hasn't really had that so much, because last year KJ Lewis couldn't shoot from the outside consistently enough. I think he shot like 20% or even worse. Caleb Love was very streaky until the end of the season, and at the end of the season he turned it on at a high level, but still, like, during the season it was kind of a chore. Jaden Bradley kind of fell off a little bit. The early part of the season last year, he was able to do a lot of things, and I think offensively he just got tired. I think he was just worn out by the end of the year. He wasn't able to provide that juice like he did against Clemson just the year before in the tournament. So when you take all those things into consideration and their limitations on the perimeter, and you add in this fresh, new like scope of guys, I really do like where they're at and their consistency to not only hit the perimeter shot, but also to be a little bit more effective at the rim. Last year, Houston forced them to shoot from the outside. And even when Tobe would get the ball down low, he didn't really have much of a chance because it was just too difficult. There was too many bodies coming at him. They were way too physical, and there was no go-to for him. So this year I expect that to change dramatically.
I do as well. And I do want to talk about this more once we, when I'm breaking down the show, about that offensive flexibility and how, like, in that DHO, you're kind of dangerous from everywhere. And I guess as long as you don't start ADO, but even then on offense, he's still dangerous in the DHO because he can come off and shoot that three, or maybe dribble it, pass it to the corner, whatever it is. But before I do get you out of here, Saul, because I know you're busy buying cowboy boots.
I got time. Take your time.
Okay, cool. Then I'll ask you this. Do you feel that Arizona is truly kind of deadly from everywhere on offense next year? From the sense that you don't have a guy like last year, right? At times, if I'm assuming if I'm a head coach of an opposing team, right? If I'm coming into Arizona, I'm not really worried as much about a Trey Townsend, right? I'm not really worried at the time, at the beginning of the year. I'm not really worried as much about a Tobe Awaka because he hadn't really showcased his skill set in the Big 12 yet. It doesn't really feel like you have that many guys on 2025's Arizona roster that you can really look over on the offensive side of things. It feels like because of how many skilled position players you have, it feels like everybody can find their offense within the flow of it, right? It doesn't like specifically in the DHOs that I'm imagining. Like it feels like you have like an Aristote out there and a Pete out there and like a Burries and a Bradley, and it's like all four of those guys can take their guy off the dribble and go get a bucket off the dribble handoff. Like how important is that going to be in comparison to 2024 for the Arizona Wildcats?
I will say this. I think everything hinges on the perimeter shooting. I don't think there's any doubt about it because I think these guys can score anything inside the 3-point line. I like in a variety of different ways at the rim, mid range, backdoor cuts, even athletically at the rim. We've seen Koa Pete already just yak on dudes. I think Dwayne Aristote is going to be a surprise for a lot of people in his versatility and being able to score. Braden Burries, same thing, high level scorer. But I think it all comes down to 3-point shooting. Because in the Big 12, teams will pack it in. They are far more physical. And if you are not hitting that perimeter shot on a consistent basis, you will struggle. And despite saying that, Arizona last year from 3-point percentage was not a great 3-point shooting team. But efficiency-wise, they were still a top 10 team in the country. So just think if you could just add that little bit of an element there, how good this team could be. And so like I like the fact that I do think that they improved from a consistency standpoint a little bit more heading into this season. But again, you just don't know how Burries is going to respond in the college level. You don't know how long it's going to take for them to get their groove is basically what I'm saying. You hope that they come out hair on fire, but you just don't know. That's why the veterans, that's why you got to rely on them so much right now at the beginning of the season until these guys get punched in the face about 4 or 5 times and they realize like, yeah, this isn't, you're not playing, no disrespect, but you're not playing Basha High School anymore, Koa. Like you're going up against Florida, the defending national champions in game number 1. And if you don't bring it, they're going to eat your lunch. But I have no doubt that they'll be prepared and ready to go. So I think 3-points percentage is definitely where I would look in terms of the consistency. I would like to see a team 3-point percentage, higher than it was last year by at least a couple points, because I just thought that there was too many times where they needed one. And besides Carter and Caleb at the end of the season, nobody else was really providing that juice from the perimeter, and it was a struggle.
I really, I've been watching a lot of Dwayne Aristote tape recently because I can't wait to see the guy hoop for Arizona, right? I feel like I'm so excited about Cole Pete. I'm so excited about Braden Burries. But you mentioned Dwayne Aristote's ability to help out that perimeter scoring aspect of things. Am I crazy to be super optimistic that he can kind of be, and this is with all respect to Carter Bryant, but he also wasn't given the same runway that I think maybe Dwayne Aristote might get based on what you're saying again about Tommy Lloyd kind of learning from his lessons, I'll say, not mistakes, right? But it feels like Dwayne Aristote could be that prototypical 3-and-D player for Arizona that like Carter Bryant you thought could be more consistently last year. Am I crazy to see some similarities there?
I wouldn't compare him to Carter Bryant. I actually, I don't know why he reminds me of Iggy.
Ooh.
I think Iggy, when I see him, because of his length, his versatility, his unique style of play. Listen, I love Basha High School. It literally is right back here behind my house. So, like, no disrespect to Basha. They got some good players at Basha, by the way, but we'll get into that another day. But yeah, I think I think Aristote really reminds me of when Iggy got here, kind of undervalued, kind of under the radar. Not a lot of people talking about him, but Iggy's ability to be as versatile without even a perimeter shot was very impressive. And I think that's where I look at somebody like Aristote. I kind of he gives me Iggy vibes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take Iggy as a comp. I'll take Carter Bryant as a comp. Both pros, you know what I mean? Both pros. But yeah, no, I really feel like he can help from a perimeter scoring standpoint. I've seen multiple highlights of Dwayne Aristode glassing somebody on one end, going down, hitting a transition three on the other. And you're seeing off-season clips of him shooting it from the logo, kind of meaningless stuff. But it does illustrate that like the man can shoot a little bit. Like he has a stroke to him, right? And I think you mentioned the idea that last year you didn't really have much perimeter wise outside of Carter Bryant and outside of Caleb Love. And we mentioned that this is, I think, Damon's main take about Jaden Bradley is that if he could just be kind of a threat from three, that his game transcends to two different levels. If if his defender even thinks that he's going to take a three. So I think that was a good little conversation about, the versatility of Arizona's offense going into 2025. And before I do get you out of here, Saul, I did want to ask you, because the purpose of bringing you on today was to talk about the front court and its importance to 2025's Arizona roster. Do you think the front court is the separator for Arizona in 2025? Meaning that if all things are equal, do you think that the backcourt is going to end up being the crucial piece for Arizona, or do you think it's going to end up being that front court for Arizona?
Oh, yeah, front court by a mile. By a mile. The only reason why I hesitated is because, to me, wing players are neither front or back.
Yeah,
So
it's
I'm like,
complicated, right?
and I think the wing could be in that conversation as well. But yeah, if you're going to be backcourt or front court, I think front court by a mile, because again, where the games Arizona struggled in, they had a hard time scoring. They could not find the consistency on the offensive end to, just get a bucket when you need one, to stop a run, to throw out the momentum. If you think about that Texas Tech game in Lubbock, I mean, oh my gosh, I wanted to just pull my eyes out watching that offensive display, because nobody could shoot. Even the shots at the rim felt like they were hard, high degree
Kansas
of difficulty.
State game as well.
The Kansas State game, really rough watch. Like those games, those grinded out games, down the stretch against Houston at home in McHale, like could not get a bucket to kind of put Houston away, despite having a 10-point lead. And those are the consistent runs. To stop those consistent runs are just vital. If you think about at Kansas, Kansas would get these runs, but Arizona couldn't just get a bucket within that 8 to 10 point run that Kansas would have, just to keep their own momentum going. And I think this year with Krivas, Pete, Tobe, and everybody else, I think they're going to have that more consistent play down low in the post. And that's why I think that's such a vital part.
I mean, people are always talking about no easy buckets on the defensive side of things, but it was literally no easy buckets for Arizona on offense last year. It really felt like at times that they were having to work like tirelessly for every bucket that they got, right? And I think that of this year, how at times if your opponent's going on a 7-0 run, it does feel like you have a guy like a Pete that can just go get you a layup if you need one. Within the offense, obviously, he's probably not going to be that dominant of a guy day one, but it does feel like you're going to have multiple guys that okay, if I throw it to Burries, or maybe Bradley's a better example. If we get it to Bradley, we can run this, and that should be able to result in a bucket no matter what. If Krivas is looking good, we can run this with Krivas. That should result in a bucket every time. It feels like you have more options to have go to when you need a bucket.
The key with this team is going to be these players finding their own individual way within the team concept. And so I think, when I say that, I mean, Pete has been the guy on his high school teams and his club teams for the most part, right? He's even run point from time to time, which I wouldn't be surprised happens from time to time in this offense, is him being the initiator, just to alleviate the pressure from Jaden Bradley. Because I don't really know what you're going to get from like Evan Nelson, right? Like you hope for the best, and I think when you play against higher competition, that is in itself will raise your level of play. But again, you're talking about an individual who, although shot nearly 40% from three, his career high is 23 points. So against what I think Elon or something like that, like who
might get banned off X for that one.
I don't even know who that is, right? So you can only rely on that so much. So when you got somebody like a Pete who can be as versatile as he is, Braden Burries, who's just an unstoppable scorer, But they still have to find their way, and they have to understand how to adjust and hit those guys, because the college game, unlike just about every other level of competition, college or pro, is so compacted. They force you to shoot from the perimeter to the mid range more than any other game or league. So if they can do that, if they can find their way within the offense to still be as creative as they are individually, but also play within the team concept and really find that good shot, that best shot, then they're gonna be phenomenal this year.
I totally agree with that. And to clarify what I was saying about them being able to have go-tos with certain guys, more so saying that within a play, they could run a play out of their system that results in a bucket for a guy. Less of the, your turn, my turn stuff, and more of just having multiple guys you can run plays for, multiple guys that are dangerous from different spots in the court.
What did Corey always say during Mikhail Madness? He was like, what's their go-to play? What's their
No
go-to
bread and
play
butter.
where they know, like, oh man, they're on a run? Like, what's their bread and butter? Where are they going to go to feel comfortable that they're going to get a high percentage shot? Because of the erraticness or the erratic nature of the team last year, they didn't really have anything consistent to go to. And I think, the early part of the season, there was so much volatility in style of play and who was playing at a high level, especially when you talk about Caleb Love, even Carter Bryant at the beginning of the season, because of his defensive lapses that happened way too many times. He couldn't find himself on the court consistent enough, and then the foul trouble contributed to that. So, just that alone, KJ Lewis kind of, vanished on the perimeter to the point where he basically had to rely on everything at the rim. And then Jaden Bradley is as much as I love him at the beginning of the season, great. Looked like we were going to get the very best Jaden Bradley. And then he kind of tailored off a little bit, and he was trying to find his way. Everything felt so difficult, so hard. It was a grind last year. I don't think we're going to see that same case this year. And despite all that, this is why I keep saying, like, Tommy Lloyd's a phenomenal coach, and Arizona is one of the best programs in the country. Stats will tell you one thing. That's great. Despite how hard it kind of seemed from time to time, they were still a top 16 team in the country. They made it to the Sweet 16. And listen, they had to play a perfect game against Duke. I thought they had a much better shot at beating Duke earlier in the year than they did in this game. And Caleb Love had to put the entire team on his back just to try and get them back in the game. And it was a struggle because Duke was clearly the better team. And, and I think this year that won't be the case.
And, on Mikhail Madness, shout out to Corey Williams, we always talked about the idea of it's hard to have a bread and butter offense when you don't know who's going to consistently produce for you night in, night out, right? Like if we, I guess this is secondary, but if you as the team itself are exiting the locker room to hit the court for tip-off, and you actually don't know how you have no vision in your head for exactly how the game is going to go, because every game this season has been different for you. So you actually have no way of knowing, is this going to be a Caleb Love game? Is this a Carter Bryant game? Is this where Tobe Awaka puts up 15 points and 10 boards? Like, I think that makes it hard to develop a bread and butter offense because you're not working on any one thing in particular. It's however we can get through tonight, it's how we're going to get through tonight. It feels like next year, going into these games, you're going to have a lot more I'm not saying they didn't have a game plan going into games next year, but you're going to have a lot more of a concrete game plan, at least offensively, going into these games. And I also think you're going to have more flexibility if you need to change it up on the fly, because you're going to have other guys that you can go to in those moments. If Koa Pete's not ready, if he's green, if Braden Burries is green in the moment, like you have other guys. And I also think, Jaden Bradley, I feel like is going to take another step this year because it feels like the pieces around him are going to lend themselves to more consistent play for him, if that makes sense. I think like playing off of a guy like Caleb Love, if you're Jaden Bradley, it's great, right? Because Caleb Love is going to take all the tough shots that might ordinarily fall on your plate, and he wants to take those shots. I'm not saying Jaden Bradley doesn't, but it's in Caleb Love's bag to take some of those shots. But at the same time, he does need the ball a little bit, and he is a bit mercurial. Damn, that word is hard. But I'm sure that's a little bit difficult for a guy like Jaden Bradley, who is kind of like a steady metronome throughout the whole way. I feel like being around a group of more consistently productive players, or consistently, whatever you want to call it, players, I think will benefit him from a guard standpoint.
I totally agree. No, nothing to add to that one.
I appreciate you for that one, because we do got to get out of here, Saul. I appreciate you for stopping on today. Where can the people find you doing all the stuff that you do?
Saul Bookman. When I do tweet, I've been kind of quiet of late because, man, there's too much drama. So I figured I was just going to lay low for a little while. My actual job is taking up quite a bit of my time of late. So yeah, that's where you can find me on Instagram as well.
Well, we appreciate you for stopping on. You can find me on Twitter at KevoPost. You can find our show, the hub of all our Wildcats content, at PHNX_Wildcats. And I hope to see you all on our Monday show next week. And I also hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Until next time, folks, as always, bear down and go Cats. Mo Krivas? I need to see it.
We all silly like the mayor.